Hello, happy Sunday to you. Welcome to another Insta Church, and happy Mother's Day. I like what C.S. Lewis said when he said, homemaking is the ultimate career. All other careers exist for one reason, and that's to support the ultimate career. Totally agree. Mothers, thank you for all that you do. I got a little scratch on my face there. You see that? Yuck. Yikes. I don't know how it happened. It was either the dog or the kids. They're all the same to me, so I don't know. I'm kidding. Anyway, but it got me thinking about, skin. And when I was in 7th grade, I got some random skin condition. Still to this day, nobody knows what it was or how I got it, how it went away. But I had this major affliction. It was this rash that consumed half of my face. It went from top of my forehead, just kind of down my face like this, down my neck, and it was like this raised, swollen thing. It was beastly looking. It was half my face, all the way to the ear. It was horrendous, and nobody knew what to do about it. I went to the doctors, and I put this stuff on it, like steroid cream or whatever, and nothing worked. Nothing worked. And it got to the point where it was like, well, I gotta just keep going about my life as best I can. Like, I gotta go to school, and I'll just deal with this. And I still remember, I see it in my mind, like a movie where, the camera's it's like first person POV, and the camera's moving down the hallway, and all you see are all the kids walking, looking right into the lens, where they're like, oh, but I remember it was yesterday, I'd be walking down the hallway, and these girls that I thought were super cool and wanted them to like me or whatever, they'd be leaping into lockers to avoid me, oh God, what is wrong with him? Ew, they'd be like, ew, he's a beast. He looks like a monster. I'd hear it as they walk by. He looks like a monster. And I would just I would do the best I could to just get through the day, wishing and praying that this thing would leave me. And it eventually did, but it took weeks and weeks. And it eventually, the way it went away, just kind of slowly, the swelling, the way it was raised off my skin, kind of went down. And then the redness kind of went away, but for a long time, there was almost a scar there where you could see sort of where you see a red birthmark, there was something there. It was left as a reminder, And then, so that was one, it was really hard, most formative years, you really want people to like you. So a couple years later, I was a senior in high school, junior in high school. I was in high school. So now it's even more, you really want people to think you're cool. And I wasn't. and part of that was because I looked like Quasimodo. I went in to get my wisdom teeth, x-rayed or whatever to see if we needed to get them out. And we discovered a tumor in my chin, which explained a lot because I had my bones in my jaw were growing out and away from my face, the opposite direction that they should be growing. So I basically had a jaw that kind of went like this on half the side, and it went down a good inch and a half. So I had this thing, right? And it was my bone. It was the jawbone. So you're looking at it going I guess this is just how I look now. Hi guys. Can I be in your club? And then of course on top of that, I'm rollerblading to chorus practice, after school and stuff. I was not the coolest. Explains a lot. But anyway, so we couldn't figure out why I was doing that. And you sort of chalk it up to I guess I'll grow into my face. I don't know. So we went to get my wisdom teeth x-rayed and realized, oh, there's a tumor growing in the bone in my jaw, and I had to get it removed. And to do that was incredibly painful, a major operation. I had to take my face down basically from inside the gums, take it out. And then they filed down the bone on this half of my face. And I could still feel this little lump where he goes, I couldn't quite get the last little ridge. I would have had to take take your whole face apart. And The way I did it, like I could just stay on the inside, so no scars on the outside. So twice in my life, I've had these catastrophic physical deformities that really, I think, really shaped me in a big way. And I learned firsthand what it feels like to be the outcast, to be reviled by your community, by the way that you look. And it was painful, very painful. And what I think we can liken this to is the lepers. I've talked about this before. If you look back at some other videos, just touched on leprosy in Scripture. But in the Old Testament, you can look at Leviticus, and it talks about lepers and then a cleansing process for them. But to be a leper in the days of Leviticus, when you're a community of 2 million. 2 million people living in the desert, living in a very harsh climate, looking for the promised land, looking for a new home. To have a skin condition that is infectious. It was infectious, and it was, you were unclean if a leper touched fabric in your home, clothes, a chair. It was such a contagious condition. It was sort of like psoriasis, a bubbling of the skin, a blistering, it turns white. It was so contagious that you had to be excommunicated from the community. Otherwise, it would infect everybody, and there was no cure for this thing that people knew of. So to be excommunicated in the desert from this community, there was no hope for you. It was a death sentence. It meant you were to die. No one could come near you. You couldn't really feed yourself in the desert unless you had the help of this community. So the only hope that you had was if God healed you, if God cleansed you. If it sort of went away on its own, which was rare, then a priest, would leave the community, would leave the group of people that were clean, would come out to you and would determine if you'd been cleansed, healed, and then there was a rite of passage to get back in. So I'm gonna read about that a little bit, and that's in Leviticus 14. The Lord said to Moses, "These are the regulations for any diseased person at the time of their ceremonial cleansing, when they are brought to the priest. The priest is to go outside the camp and examine them. If they've been healed or their defiling skin disease, the priest shall order that 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the person to be cleansed. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it, together with cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop, into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the defiling disease, and then pronounce them clean. After that, he is to release the live bird in the open fields." Okay. So what does that mean? I don't know if you've ever tried to get through the Bible. You're like, I'll start with Genesis and Exodus, Leviticus, and then Numbers, and then I can't do this anymore. Before I go into maybe what I think that means, and when I say let's be honest, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I never would have found this on my own. It's in diving into other people's work that I understand this and that I agree with it after thinking about it. But I want to skip ahead real quick. Let's look at Luke 24:36 through 49. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." This is after the crucifixion. This is after the tomb has been found empty. The disciples of Christ, the apostles, are in an upper room, terrified. Everything they thought that they had given themselves to has failed them by all looks and appearances. This Messiah, who they they aligned themselves with had just been killed, and they thought they were next. So they're in a room in an attic, basically going like, what do we do now? And this happens. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, peace be with you. This was in a locked room, by the way. He just appears. They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. When he said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still did not believe, because of joy and amazement, he asked them, do you have anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, this is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms. So here you have not a ghost, but a living, breathing, fleshly being who they definitely saw hanging and dying on a cross. They definitely saw buried. Now he's in this resurrected, perfected body, living and breathing, going like, here, I'll show you. I'm not a ghost. Give me some food. I'll eat it in front of you. It's not going to go anywhere. It's in me. I'm real. That person is saying, everything that we talked about, everything that I said would happen, that was written about, that was written about in the book of Moses, the Torah, the books of the prophets, of the Psalms, our Old Testament, that was about me. And now I'm fulfilling all those things. Okay, so what was about him? Okay, let's look back at this. Leviticus and what we read. There's a ceremony for the leper. Kind of like me in 7th grade. Kind of like me now. Leprosy then, there was an implication with that word that went beyond just the condition of the skin. It could be a spiritual condition, a condition where in the imperfections of somebody, the disease of somebody could be a spiritual disease. And it was something that could infect everything around them. And they needed to be made clean to be brought back. But the only way they could be brought to the priest outside of the community to hopefully be spoken for and a ceremony to be provided that allowed them back in was if God healed them in the first place. God made it a possibility for them to come back in. So you have the priest saying, take 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood. The 2 live clean birds, one is Christ and one is you and me. Some cedar wood is the cross. Scarlet yarn and hyssop. They would tie the bird with the scarlet yarn so they could dip the tail feathers into the blood of the mixture of blood and water in the clay pot. The clay pot is Christ. He came down. I am the clay. You are the potter. Clay is always the human body. It's this weak temporary vessel. Jesus came down. God came down and condescended to become man for us. That's the clay pot. The word used for the water, the running water, could also be translated to say the living water. Christ, the living water, fills the clay pot. And it's the blood of one of the birds that mixes with that water to allow the cleansing of the other bird, tied with the blood of their afflictions. The hyssop represents the afflictions, and a way to transfer the blood and water from the clay pot to the other bird, and then once the living bird is cleansed from the living water and the blood of the other in the clay pot, it was set free. It's us that's set free through this cleansing ceremony. 7 times the priest shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed. 7 means completion or perfection. It is done to completion. It is finished. That living bird is released to the fields, perfected and cleansed once and for all. Jesus is in the Old Testament. It's not outdated or outmoded. He's there. Let's dive into what he says and let's cling to that promise. Let's make him our blood and water, our rite of cleansing, so that we can be set free.